I'm going to talk about spirituality. And the subject of spirituality is where my materialism and non-dualism and skepticism and relativism all, uh, the impact of the subtle, you know, changes in the definitions of knowledge and where knowledge comes from, these small changes, um, start to have a more noticeable impact because it's complicated. And all of the errors that I'm attempting to correct with my retooling of certain definitions and concepts um, come together in something like spirituality, so that we get spirituality like totally wrong. You know, we believe in metaphysical deities and kill other people in their name. No. Um, it's where all the grains of truth come together and, do good and evil. Uh, this is ironic, and, it's not surprising a lot of people just want to get rid of spirituality. Well, that's never going to happen. You have to learn to do something with your spiritual sense. It's like lust or any other human urge. You have to act on it, or you will go batshit crazy. Like with hunger, obviously we know the material cause of that so well that leads to death in our minds. But no, like any of these, it'll drive you crazy being really, really hungry and having just to endure that. That's the point, so that you'll go act on it. The spiritual urge is more subtle, but if you deny it, you will build up, serious problems in your psychology, because it is a natural area. And that's how I'm going to define it materially. The funny thing is, often when I talk about material spirituality, people think that means there's a soul and that it's somehow material. That's what I'm saying. And if the soul was somehow separate from the body, like it was a bunch of energy that the body was just had absorbed, or somehow, like let's say souls were energy minds flying through space at the speed of light, and when they happen to touch an animal, a little bit of the energy gets absorbed in the animal. And the brain is just a way of tuning that energy in, of making that energy stay in one place. It's a mechanical trick to take energy that's flying through space and kind of get it to stop and circulate in one space. I don't believe that. But that's material. That is a material spirituality, but there's not much, I don't think, evidence for that. And that is still too dualist for me. I don't want to separate out my spiritual self from my body. Um, uh, to refound, my epistemology in the stream of perceptions. Okay, that gives a hint as to where you would go with such a system in terms of analyzing spirituality. Okay, you don't go for a spiritual substance. See, that's like an idea of Aristotle and others, but I mean, it's like the idea that there's substances and substances have properties. So that's like the description of the computer program the mind runs to model the world. Like if I was going to write a computer program for an actual computer to make 3D space, simulated with 3D graphics, I would be right. Okay, I would say, well, there's substances have properties. I'd be attaching all these little objects. It's not really how the real world is. Everything is energy, which is not at all like what we think of as substance. Okay, substance is this idea of like clay that's infinitely, divisible. It keeps being clay all the way down. Okay, so to look for substance is already giving into dualism. It turns out it's ironic because you think, no, substance is the real thing. It's the stuff, I can feel it, touch it with my hands, and therefore, what you need to do is stop right there and say, oh wait, why do I believe it's real? Because I've touched it. So what is actually convincing to me is senses of touch, not substances per se, except for insofar as we define a substance as whatever feels to the skin. Now, of course, my definition of substance, such that I do have it, which I don't use substance so much as because of the history, and I like the word material, is the material world. There is energy there. Energy is material. Mass, which is a lot like substance, is material. So, that's the sense in which everything is material. But still, because of this history of substance, I'm inclined not to define things in terms of substance, but in terms of that perception of feeling something. So, what's spirituality then? Well, people have spiritual experiences. That's the starting point, your experiences. We look at the kinds of experiences that people have when they say they're having a spiritual experience. But if we do just that, we look just at other people. The fact is, a lot of spiritual experiences, are perfectly mundane to anybody else, because it's an emotional experience. It's like an experience of love. And somebody's like, oh, I felt so in love with that person. And you're like, yeah, and you know what they're talking about, but it doesn't feel that way to you. To you, it's just like, whatever. And it's the same thing with spiritual experiences. So it's key, if you want to talk about spiritual experiences, to identify in your life which ones are spiritual. Now, how can somebody else tell you that? Well, I don't know. How can somebody else tell you what you'll feel like when you're in love? There's physiological effects to it, but those vary with the individual. You can describe them and give people an idea. You can also give people a bunch of false signals that they can find in a case where it's not really spiritual. And spiritual experiences are a subtle thing. The bottom line is, for me, I have been in situations where just it felt like momentous perspectives were moving in my mind and shifting into a new place where suddenly the light shines through this new crystal that was opaque or distorted just a moment before, and you see something, and you can generally carry some aspect of that something out of that experience. You don't feel that feeling of intense wonder of it, but you feel an influence and a memory, and you can remember how wonderful it was often. And